Top 5 NATO generals hold emergency meeting over Trump's Iran war order. 5 of NATO's most powerful generals gathered behind closed doors in Brussels for what sources are calling the most urgent and secretive military consultation since the alliance's founding. The topic: Donald Trump's direct order to prepare for what could become the largest American military operation in the Middle East in over 2 decades, and the assessment coming out of that room. The United States military is not ready for what Iran has become. Welcome to Legal Lens USA. I am your host, David Reynolds. What you are about to hear will completely reshape how you understand the balance of power in the Middle East and the very real possibility that American forces could be walking into a conflict that no amount of technology, no amount of firepower, and no amount of confidence can guarantee they will win. Before we go any further, if you are new here, hit that like button and subscribe right now because we cover stories like this before anyone else does, and we break them down in a way that actually makes sense. The meeting took place at NATO headquarters in Brussels, a fortress of steel and glass that has witnessed decades of strategic planning, crisis management, and diplomatic maneuvering. But this gathering was different. No press releases, no official statements, no carefully worded communiques about alliance solidarity and shared commitment to regional stability. Just 5 generals, each representing a different NATO member state, each bringing decades of combat experience and strategic planning expertise, each walking into that conference room knowing that what they were about to discuss could determine whether the Atlantic Alliance survives the next 12 months intact. According to sources familiar with the proceedings, the atmosphere was tense from the moment the first general arrived. These were not politicians seeking photo opportunities or diplomats crafting carefully hedged language. These were military professionals tasked with assessing operational readiness, force projection capabilities, and the realistic probability of success in what could become the defining military confrontation of the 21st century. The generals represented the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Turkey. Each brought their own intelligence assessments. Each brought their own concerns. And according to multiple reports emerging from defense circles in Europe and the United States, each left that meeting with the same conclusion. If Donald Trump orders American forces into direct military confrontation with Iran, the outcome is far from certain. The meeting lasted over 6 hours. That alone tells you something. When senior military commanders spend 6 hours in closed-door consultation over a single operational scenario, they are not discussing routine contingency planning. They are grappling with a problem that has no easy answers, no clear path to victory, and significant potential for catastrophic failure. The weapon system dominating much of that discussion was the Fatah, Iran's hypersonic missile that has already demonstrated capabilities that fundamentally challenge every assumption NATO militaries have operated under for the past 70 years. The Fatah is not just another missile, it represents a technological leap that changes the strategic calculus of modern warfare in ways that most Western audiences do not fully appreciate yet. Traditional missiles, the kind that have been deployed in conflicts for decades, follow a predictable trajectory. They launch, they arc through the atmosphere, they descend toward their target. Radar systems can track that arc. Computers can calculate the probable impact point. Interceptor missiles can be launched to meet the incoming threat. Air defense networks from the Patriot system to the Iron Dome to the THAAD batteries deployed across the Middle East all operate on the fundamental assumption that missiles behave predictably once launched. The Fatah does not behave predictably. Instead of following a ballistic arc, it deploys a hypersonic glide vehicle, a maneuverable payload that can weave through the atmosphere at speeds exceeding Mach 13. Read that number again, Mach 13. That translates to approximately 15,000 kilometers per hour under optimal conditions. At that velocity, a missile launched from western Iran could reach American military installations in Qatar, Bahrain, or Kuwait in under 10 minutes. 10 minutes from launch to impact. That is not much time to detect the launch, confirm the trajectory, calculate the target, decide on a response, and execute interception. And here is where the Fatah becomes genuinely alarming. It does not just move fast, it maneuvers. Traditional ballistic missiles follow physics. Once launched, their path is determined by velocity, angle, and gravity. The Fatah's hypersonic glide vehicle can adjust its trajectory mid-flight, approaching targets from unexpected angles, evading interception attempts, and maintaining speeds that make tracking extraordinarily difficult. According to technical assessments reviewed by defense analysts, the missile can perform what engineers call atmospheric skip glide, essentially bouncing along the upper atmosphere like a stone skipping across water, except that stone is traveling at 15 times the speed of sound and carrying a warhead capable of destroying hardened military infrastructure. The engineering challenges involved in building such a weapon are immense. The temperatures generated by atmospheric friction at hypersonic speeds exceed 2,000 degrees Celsius. Most materials melt or disintegrate under those conditions. Maintaining guidance and control while the vehicle's surface is literally ablating away requires materials science and engineering precision that only a handful of nations on Earth have demonstrated. And yet Iran has apparently solved those problems. Iranian officials claim the Fatah has been successfully tested multiple times and has already been deployed in combat operations, specifically in strikes against Israeli military targets that allegedly killed 7 senior Israeli Defense Forces commanders in a single attack. According to Iranian military sources, that strike penetrated Israel's multi-layered air defense network, traveled through some of the most sophisticated defensive systems on the planet, and destroyed a fortified command center that was designed to survive direct hits from conventional munitions. Now, those claims come from Iranian state media and military officials, which means they require careful evaluation. But here is what makes the claims particularly concerning for NATO planners. Israeli defense industry executives have acknowledged the threat is real. Yuval Bazisi, vice president of Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, the Israeli company that manufactures many of the interceptor missiles deployed to defend against Iranian attacks, went on record to say that hypersonic missiles like the Fatah have forced Israel to completely rethink its approach to missile defense. He stated that traditional air defense systems were not designed to handle threats of this nature and warned that current interception methods could not be reliably deployed against hypersonic weapons. Let that sink in for a moment. The vice president of the company that builds Israel's missile defense interceptors is publicly acknowledging that their systems cannot effectively counter the weapon Iran has deployed. Drawing an analogy to basketball, Bazisi said that trying to intercept a hypersonic missile with current systems is like trying to defend LeBron James one-on-one. You can chase him all you want, but you are not going to stop him from scoring. That assessment from an Israeli defense industry insider carries enormous weight, and it helps explain why those 5 NATO generals spent 6 hours behind closed doors in Brussels trying to figure out what happens if American forces are ordered into direct confrontation with a military that possesses weapons their defensive systems cannot reliably stop. According to sources familiar with the intelligence briefings presented during that meeting, American military installations across the Middle East are now operating under the assumption that they exist within range of weapons that can strike with minimal warning and potentially overwhelm defensive systems through sheer speed and maneuverability. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, one of the largest American military installations in the region, hosts thousands of American service members and serves as a critical logistics and command hub for operations across the Middle East and Central Asia. Camp Arifjan in Kuwait provides forward operating support for ground forces. Naval Support Activity Bahrain serves as headquarters for the United States Fifth Fleet, responsible for naval operations throughout the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, and Arabian Sea. Every single one of these installations now sits within range of the Fatah. And according to defense analysts who have studied Iranian missile capabilities, current American defensive systems deployed at those bases cannot guarantee interception. The THAAD system, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, was designed to intercept ballistic missiles during their terminal phase as they descend toward targets. But THAAD operates on the assumption that incoming missiles follow predictable trajectories. The Fatah's ability to maneuver during flight fundamentally undermines that assumption. Patriot missile batteries, which have been deployed across the region for decades, face similar limitations. They were engineered to counter aircraft and ballistic missiles, not hypersonic glide vehicles approaching from unexpected vectors at 15,000 kilometers per hour. What does this mean strategically? This is where the story moves from concerning to genuinely alarming for anyone who understands the operational realities of modern military conflict. For the past 3 decades, American military doctrine in the Middle East has operated on the assumption of overwhelming technological superiority. American forces could deploy anywhere in the region, establish bases, project power, and operate with confidence that hostile forces lacked the capability to inflict catastrophic damage on American installations. That assumption no longer holds. If Iran possesses operational hypersonic missiles that can strike American bases with high probability of penetrating defensive systems, then the entire calculus of force projection changes. Suddenly, every American service member stationed at those bases operates under threat of attack that they cannot reliably defend against. Every aircraft parked on those runways, every logistics hub, every command center exists as a potential target that could be destroyed with minimal warning, and developing defensive systems capable of reliably intercepting hypersonic weapons is not something that happens quickly. According to defense industry analysts, implementing effective hypersonic defense could require years of development and testing, along with tens of billions of dollars in research, engineering, and deployment costs. In the meantime, Iran's Fatah arsenal represents a threat that current systems cannot adequately counter. The implications for American decision-making are direct and immediate. Political leaders and military commanders now must factor into every calculation the reality that American forces deployed to the region operate under a level of vulnerability that has not existed in modern memory. That changes risk assessment. That changes force protection requirements. That changes the fundamental question of whether military action against Iran represents a viable option or a catastrophic miscalculation. According to reports from European defense sources, the NATO generals who gathered in Brussels expressed profound concern about what they characterized as a dangerous disconnect between political expectations and military realities. Donald Trump, according to these sources, has been briefed on Iranian capabilities, but appears to believe that American technological superiority remains so overwhelming that any confrontation would result in swift and decisive American victory. The generals, according to sources familiar with their assessment, do not share that confidence. They reportedly emphasize that Iran is not Iraq in 2003, not Libya in 2011, not any of the adversaries that American forces have confronted over the past several decades. Iran has spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. They have studied American tactics. They have developed weapons specifically designed to counter American strengths. They have built redundant command and control systems, hardened infrastructure, and dispersed military assets to minimize vulnerability to the kind of overwhelming air campaign that characterized previous American military operations in the region. And they have apparently solved one of the most difficult engineering challenges in modern weapons development, creating operational hypersonic missiles that can threaten American forces in ways that fundamentally alter the strategic balance. The meeting in Brussels also addressed another deeply troubling dimension of the current crisis. According to sources, intelligence assessments presented to the generals suggested that Iran may have received technical assistance in hypersonic weapons development from other nations, most likely Russia or China, both of which have their own advanced hypersonic programs. If that assessment is accurate, then the Fatah represents not just an Iranian technological achievement, but evidence of deeper strategic coordination between American adversaries who have concluded that supporting Iranian military capabilities serves their broader geopolitical interests. The implications of that possibility extend far beyond the immediate question of conflict between the United States and Iran. It suggests a level of coordination and capability sharing among American adversaries that fundamentally changes the global strategic landscape. Now, it is important to acknowledge that not everyone shares this assessment of Iranian capabilities or the level of concern expressed by those NATO generals. According to American defense officials who spoke with reporters following the Brussels meeting, the United States military maintains overwhelming superiority in virtually every category of military capability and retains the ability to conduct successful operations against Iranian forces if ordered to do so. Pentagon spokespersons have emphasized that American forces train constantly for exactly these scenarios, that defensive systems continue to improve, and that operational planning accounts for the full range of potential threats. According to these officials, concerns about Iranian hypersonic capabilities, while legitimate, do not fundamentally alter the military balance or call into question American ability to achieve strategic objectives if conflict occurs. The conflicting assessments, Iranian claims of game-changing capabilities versus American assurances of continued superiority, create an atmosphere of uncertainty that makes rational decision-making extraordinarily difficult. For political leaders trying to decide whether military action represents a viable option, the divergent perspectives from different parts of the intelligence and defense communities complicate rather than clarify the picture. And that uncertainty, according to analysts who study military decision-making, increases rather than decreases the risk of catastrophic miscalculation. When leaders believe they understand the operational environment clearly, they can make informed choices about acceptable risk. When leaders operate in an environment of genuine uncertainty about adversary capabilities and the likely outcome of military confrontation, the probability of decisions based on overconfidence or misunderstanding increases substantially. So where does this leave us? It leaves us at a moment where 5 of NATO's most senior military commanders felt compelled to spend 6 hours in emergency consultation over a scenario that just months ago would have seemed almost unthinkable. It leaves us with credible reports that American military installations across the Middle East now operate under threat from weapons that current defensive systems cannot reliably intercept. It leaves us with an American president who has reportedly ordered military planners to prepare for major operations against Iran, while his own military commanders, according to European sources, harbor serious doubts about the likelihood of swift and decisive victory. And it leaves us with a weapon system, the Fatah, that according to Israel's own defense industry has fundamentally changed the strategic calculation of missile defense and modern warfare. This is a story that is still developing, and Legal Lens USA will keep you updated as new information emerges about what those generals discussed, what conclusions they reached, and what recommendations they provided to their respective governments. If this video helped you understand what is really happening behind closed doors in the highest levels of military planning, please share it with someone who needs to see it and drop a comment below. Do you think the United States and NATO have a credible answer to Iran's hypersonic capabilities right now? Or are we watching military planners realize they face a threat they are not prepared to counter? Let us know what you think, because this conversation matters, and your perspective matters. What happened in that Brussels conference room over those 6 hours represents more than just another meeting. It represents a turning point where the assumptions that have guided Western military planning for decades are being fundamentally challenged by technological developments that change the rules of modern conflict. The answers are not clear yet. The response is not defined yet. But the question has been asked, loudly and urgently, by 5 generals who understand better than most what it means when the weapons you relied on to protect your forces can no longer guarantee their safety.